For whatever reason, though, it wasn't until graduation that I realized this. I don't know why it took me this long, but I realized that an openly lesbian, unapologetically liberal, outspoken Catholic woman with an MDiv had somewhat limited career potential. It would take years to find a Catholic community that would hire me as their pastoral associate. And when that chance finally arrived, I was welcomed to the staff of a Jesuit parish in New York City. And this parish was noted for its ministry to the poor, as well as the gay and lesbian community. The parish had an interesting phenomenon that they referred to as upstairs church and downstairs church. Upstairs church was the sanctuary itself, where Mass, confessions, weddings, baptisms took place. Directly below the church was an auditorium, where every Sunday afternoon more than 900 women and men would come and receive a hot meal, clothing, toiletries, sometimes even a massage for the weary bodies that lived on the street. It was one of the most life-giving times of my life, but there were many spirit-breaking revelations also. In upstairs church, though I held the ordination degree and all the appropriate ministerial experience and the deep desire to be there, I could not baptize the baby or marry the couple because of my God-given gender. Though I did my very best to serve the community, I was never held in the same esteem as my priest colleagues because of my unordained and unordainable body. But in downstairs church, my gender and my sexual orientation never seemed to create barriers. The poor reached out to me and asked me to pray for them, with them, over them. Their longings were basic and bodily: to be touched, to be listened to be looked at with love. They didn't know my previous education, my background, my sexual orientation, my theology, or my politics. None of it seemed to matter anyway. They only saw presence, my presence. And if I wasn't present, particularly on a given Sunday, they let me know it. These moments had a raw authenticity that often seemed elusive in upstairs church. I've been present at many consecrations of the Eucharist, but most of those rituals pale in comparison to the presence of Christ I saw in the despairing eyes of a homeless man when I put him in the car headed for a much overdue detox, or in the grateful gasp of a poor couple when I gave them money to obtain a marriage license so that they could stay in a shelter together. I'm sure so many of you out here tonight have had even more powerful and vivid experiences on the margins in your own ministries. I was feeding people, and I was being fed too. And I began to realize that this is really all Jesus asks of us, that with our bodies we become bread for one another. And I began to recognize that downstairs church really was an authentic church. Working in a Catholic parish, I was regularly reminded of how marginalized I was as a woman in a church that only respected male authority. I often felt at best underutilized and limited, and at worst, oppressed and useless. I'm sure some of you can relate to this charming experience. And yet I cannot help but see what a gift it has been to be forced to live on the margins of the institutional church. It's a paradox, I know, but I've met God in more paradoxes than I have houses of worship. Had I been born a male, I would have immediately been given an engraved invitation to the seminary and ushered into the palace walls, quickly settled into a life of privilege and relative isolation. Of course, I would have undoubtedly done some ministry on the margins as part of my training, but being excluded from the church's center of power compelled me to discover the face of God in places I might never have ventured into. If I had not been rejected by the church because of my anatomy, I might never have had the chance to experience God's real presence on the edge of our society and our church.